A while ago, admittedly quite a long while ago, you guys asked me all your burning flute repair questions. So today we are taking a trip to visit Petri, my magical flute repair guy from the Flute Workshop, and he is going to answer some of your questions. Because there were so many questions, I have divided these videos up. This is the first of the series. We are going to be looking at flute kind of cleaning and maintenance questions. Let's get going. I am sitting here today with Petri from the Flute Workshop. He is going to be answering all of your guys' questions about flute maintenance and repair. So let's dive straight in. So a question that I got asked several times by several of you is, what should we be doing daily, weekly and monthly in terms of like a cleaning and maintenance routine?
Alright, the most important thing naturally would be simply to dry your flute every time before you pack it into your case where it actually should go when you're not playing. Safest place, and that's it. So to do all that, you can, most of you probably have the sort of more traditional way of using a stick and a drying cloth. I quite like to wrap it around the stick like this, that it's not sort of flopping around, because it's less likely to get stuck in the flute.
That's a really good
And you simply do like oboe and clarinet players do their pull-throughs, get it through. If it opens up, it doesn't matter, go one way a couple of times like this, and that should take care of that part of the flute. You do the same thing with the foot joint naturally.
I'm learning some things here because I can genuinely say I've never done this before. That is so cool. I'm
back on
adopting a new cleaning strategy here.
And do it a couple of times. Winter time, in the cold, when it's more prone to condensation, it's better to do it a few more extra times. And that's it. Head joint, slightly different story. You can just flip the thing over like this. It's not ideal, but it at least gets to the most of the places in the head joint in the corner, like you can see there. Then you just simply turn around. Careful just not to push too hard against the stopper, because it can move and that causes other problems. So don't want to do that. Now it's all done. It can go back to its case and everything should be fine until you play next time. Other way to clean the head joint, what is slightly better, you could do occasionally, it's just to take again a corner but without a stick and just simply stuff a lump of the cloth in. Use the other end in the middle of the cloth, put it in, and you can actually get much further in there.
That's cool.
And then you do the same thing, you actually get really well dried up everything there. Now there's also a nice new type of stick, these sort of
I've seen
flat
these.
kind of things. The very nice thing with this is that it's a bit quicker, cannot get stuck, so all you do, put it in,
twist it
spin
around.
it a few times. I would recommend to spin it one way rather than both ways, because then the flaps don't open, but you have to do it from both ends because it's not long enough to do it well. So that's all what you do, and because it's got a sort of bent over end, it goes straight into the head joint and simply cleans it in one go. So it's quicker, it's easier, choice is yours.
I have a new life goal right there. I want one of those. That's
I'll see you in a few days time then.
Okay, let's talk. So what would you do? What would you advise people do is there anything specific on a weekly basis that people should do?
Look, like I said, the drying is the important thing. What you should do every time before you store the flute in the case, and really, it's okay to leave it for 5-10 minutes on the table. Not on the music stand and not on the chair. There could be lots of big problems coming from that one. So,
or on the floor. Do not put it on the floor.
Yes, there are ugly sides about that as well. The other thing is, of course, to clean your fingerprints off with a sort of more. I wouldn't recommend polishing cloth for the plated instruments because they do wear the plating off eventually. But the microfiber cloths, anything, most of the flutes come with a cleaning cloth, so you can use that. So you just clean off the fingerprints sort of on the main body. You can wipe the tops of the keys, wherever needs to be wiped. No point of trying to get between the keys, because you're more likely to damage the pads than doing anything useful. The proper cleanup happens once a year when you take your flute for the service, when everything gets taken off and actually be cleaned properly.
One of the big questions that came up as well is, can you leave your instrument out of the case between practice sessions and or on a flute stand? Should you at least swap it through once? And can you kind of just leave it lying there for like days on end out of the case?
Look, I think it's a good idea if you leave it for 10-15 minutes. You can as well swap it. It takes you 10 seconds to do that.
Especially one of these.
That's quicker and easier. But if you got your cloth, like a lot of people seem to have it already on the stick in their case, inside the case cover, you simply take it out. It probably take 90% of the moisture out doing this once. And it's not a bad idea. It just simply keeps the pads drier, everything, because the moisture comes out. It also cleans the inside of the flute because now you push it through rather than leaving just to dry, because then the moisture disappears but the dirt is left behind. It is not so great. And in a long time it accumulates there and gets harder and harder to clean up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would dry it, and I wouldn't really suggest to leave it for any length of period. If you put it down for 5 minutes, fine, particularly if you are there with your flute. If you leave it on the peg or the music stand or the chair, you're just asking for trouble. Yeah.
Another question, should we use a special cloth for cleaning the outside of the flute?
Yeah, no, you can't use the drying cloth, obviously. It's not designed to use that. It's better for sucking up moisture. It's quite a sort of gauzy type of thing, whereas a cleaning cloth is either sort of microfiber cloth, what is very good over all types of instruments. You can also use for solid silver instruments proper silver cleaning cloth, but don't get too excited about cleaning it too much, because it's just you just want to keep it clean. It is a good idea. Don't get too fussy about the in between the stuff, because those can be cleaned in their annual service and stuff like that. So weekly, there is no real weekly sort of thing, but unless you do a weekly sort of slightly better cleanup with your outside of the flute, that's really all.
A few questions about tarnish. We all know that horrible tarnish that develops between your keys and you just can't seem to get to it. So the first question is, does it damage your instrument and how can it be removed? Okay,
it's you can, by cleaning your flute regularly and keeping clean, it does reduce the tarnishing. It's usually best when it's in its case. It's less likely to get tarnished because it doesn't get so dirty, dust doesn't settle, and the air is more stable inside the case than particularly if you live in a coast where it's more salt in the air and stuff like that, tends to tarnish the flutes more. But also tarnish is related to your acidity on your skin and how sweaty you are and all that sort of thing. It all affects. So it's with some people flutes get far more tarnished than others. So it's a tricky one. The tarnish in itself doesn't affect the sound at all. Yes, it is oxidization. So it basically eats away the tiniest layer of silver, but it's so little that it will still last 1,000 years, that flute, even if it's tarnished. So it doesn't really matter. But it really can only be cleaned properly when the flute is having its annual service, what I like to call clean, oil and adjust, because it kind of explains more than word service. It's an unfortunate thing, the tarnish thing, that happens with the silver flutes and silver plated flutes, because it's part of how the silver reacts to the atmospheric things, oxygen mainly.
This is a patron specific question as well. I left my flute silver on its stand while I was away for 3 weeks and it tarnished near the keys. There seems to be different opinions online of how to get back to a beautiful instrument. What to do?
Okay, easiest way, take it to a flute tech who can clean it properly. Most of the tarnish should come out. Once again, you can't really, if it's on the keys, they're a bit tricky because you will have to then take the pads out if you want to clean them properly. You'll have to remove the pads, and it's probably not worth it before it gets actually properly repadded in the future whenever. And the bottom line is one shouldn't leave it for 3 weeks outside the case, because they tend to tarnish considerably less in the case. Except a few funny cases I've seen, but those are real masterpieces when actually the flutes go kind of blue in the case. And there's, I guess it's something in the glue what they use on the lining of the case, what actually reacts with the flute But that, funny enough, that comes off very easy.
Okay.
But so it can be cleaned, but you can't clean it really yourself. You can try your polishing cloth if it's a solid silver instrument, or just your microfiber cloth or something like that, just to wipe it a little bit. But the tarnish does take a little more than that to come off. Never ever please put in any liquid silver polish or stuff like that. But it is bound to run everywhere else where it should, and you can't actually get there to clean it off.
Sounds terrible.
It does, and it looks terrible too.
Don't do it, guys. Don't do it. Yeah. Another question: does cleaning your flute too much, or not cleaning it enough? I think we've kind of covered. But does cleaning your flute too much affect your instrument? Can you do that?
I guess you could, particularly with the plated instruments. If you keep rubbing them all the time, every time you finish playing and all that quite thoroughly with a proper silver polishing cloth, got some silver polishing compound in it, you will wear through the plating, and you don't want to do that. So there's no real need to sort of be extremely fussy about cleaning it. I think it's better actually to be on the side of not quite enough than too much, but neither does real damage. One problem is that if you try to clean too much, you very easily touch the edges of the pads, and they can tear fairly easily.
Oh, wow.
And so I would tend to be on the side of don't get too fussy.
I think that's a big one for flute players, because we are very vain. We want to have like beautiful, pretty instruments. It's most of the reason we play them, let's face it.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful, guys, not too much polishing. A very common problem, sticky pads on the flute. We all know about it. What can we do against this? What can we do to help?
Okay, the servicing, getting it taken apart and cleaned properly does help. Doesn't solve the problem completely because it's moisture related. Dirt makes it worse, so that's one good reason why you clean your flute, particularly the moisture out with the dirt, so that's why you don't just air dry them. But yes, we all know about the stickiness of the keys, and so there are a few things one can do. So cigarette paper probably being the most common one, and just be careful when you use cigarette paper that you don't use the glue edge if it's got one, if it's not particularly made for instruments. So when you have a very sticky pad, these are not sticky at the moment, but I can as well show how to do it. So if you got the cigarette paper, you simply put it under and close it, not just close it there with a normal playing pressure, hold it there for a while, change to the other part of the paper maybe. It usually leaves a wet mark if it's been just played, and the pads are most vulnerable when they are wet, so one must be quite careful, and if they still feel sticky, one can very gently press it down and just pull the paper out a few times. It always carries a risk of tearing the pad, but it takes much more dirt out. These kind of more microfibery cloth type of things tend to take more moisture out, so you can just press it there, hold it there, move the place, do it a couple of times, and then maybe use the cigarette paper just very with the lightest of pressure, just pull it out a couple of times like this, and it usually helps. The good thing with these is that they won't tear if they get wet. Cigarette paper problem is if you put it there and it's very wet and you take it out, you might leave pieces of paper there. Difficult to get out. That's pretty much the best we can come up with, particularly on the go on your own. Once it comes here, one can clean the pads a little bit better. But it's usually the dirt, and once they start getting too sticky, it's unfortunately time to actually repad the flute, because there's only that much you can do cleaning them.
Okay guys, those were the flute cleaning questions that we were asked. There will be other videos coming out soon on other flute topics, so stay tuned for those. Thank you hugely to Petri from the Flute Workshop for doing this lovely kind of sit down question and answer session. Happy practicing everybody, and see you soon.